Even though I've been writing about mobile technology since 2001, starting with PDAs and now covering smartphone wearables and everything that moves, there remains a few events on my bucket list. These include visiting the home bases for Samsung, Google, and Apple. And I finally can check one of those off my list. I made my first trip to Mountain View last week, one of the public venues and not the actual Google campus, for the Made by Google 2024 event. And I thoroughly enjoyed the few hours I was able to speak with Google folks and get hands on many new products that you're going to see here and on ZDNet over the next couple months. In this video, I'm just going to share some initial experiences and impressions with the phones, with plans for more coverage of these and the upcoming Pixel Watch 3. There's a lot packed into all these Google products and I need more time to spend with them, and 1 week's just not going to cut it, but I will give you some of my first impressions and we'll talk a little bit more about those. Hello everyone, this is Matthew Miller, also known as Palm Solo, and thanks for visiting the Mobile with Matt YouTube channel. Please consider subscribing, leaving comments, as I try to respond to all of them, and I love interacting with my viewers. I'm getting pretty good number of viewers and not much interaction, so I really appreciate any interaction that you want to make with me, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. As I mentioned in the introduction, I went down to Mountain View last week, and I came away with 3 new products. The Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, the Google Pixel 9 Pro, and the Google Pixel 9. As you can see here, one in the wintergreen, one in the obsidian, and the other in the porcelain color. For the past year, I've been primarily using an Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max as my daily driver, with a second SIM card to test various Android smartphones, because most of the Androids today still use an eSIM and a physical SIM card. So after picking up an evaluation Pixel 9 Pro XL in this porcelain color, thank you Google, I visited my local T-Mobile store to get a physical SIM card. I could have used an eSIM, but the one thing nice about having a physical SIM card is that I can then pop it in between all 3 of these Google phones and other phones as I test them out as well. I now have my T-Mobile SIM in the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL, and I'm going to use it as my daily driver. For people like me that swap between phones, the convenience of a physical SIM card is really tough to beat, and I really hate that Apple doesn't give me that option, but it's pretty quick to visit my T-Mobile store, and the customer service rep there at the T-Mobile store now knows me, because I think this is the 3rd time that I've gone back to get a physical SIM card, and as soon as I walked in, he notices that I was wearing 2 watches and immediately knew to get me a SIM card. So when I placed the Pixel 9 Pro XL next to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, it's honestly tough to tell them apart with just a glance. Google now has nearly the same type of frame with the flat sides, the rounded edges, and the rounded corners, and there's no buttons on the Pixel on the left side with the power button and the volume buttons on the right side. Just like Apple, USB-C's on the bottom, and that's been something that Google has had for a long time, and it's nice to see Apple have, where I no longer have to worry about changing cables to charge up the device. So while at first glance the front looks very similar and the edges, the major exterior difference appears on the back, where Google has a modified bar of cameras across the top, while Apple collects its cameras in the top left corner. One nice thing about the Google bar is that the phone rests even when you set it down on the back. There's no wobbling from side to side, so that's pretty nice to have. I love the matte finish that is on the back of these Pro models, with the black and the porcelain models that I have in hand, and that wintergreen Pixel 9 is lovely, but I'm not really a fan of glossy back panels. The Pixel 9 Pro XL and the 9 Pro have the same rear triple camera system with a 50 megapixel wide camera, a 48 megapixel ultra wide with macro focus, and a 48 megapixel 5x telephoto lens. That telephoto lens can also support super res zoom up to 30 times. And the nice thing about it is that customers no longer have to choose any specification difference, battery capacity of course because of the size, but the cameras between the smaller version and the larger version are exactly the same. There is a $100 price difference between the Pro and the Pro XL, but a lot of people just want a slightly smaller phone, and now they don't have to compromise on anything other than the size. It's fantastic to see Google go that route, where now the choice between the top 2 devices is really in the size of the phone you want, and not so much having to make a compromise on the specifications. Some people in the past would buy the larger phone for the best cameras, but they didn't like the larger phone because it didn't fit into their lifestyle. The Pixel 9, on the other hand, has very much the same aesthetics as all of the Pixel 9 devices, with the same front, the flat edges, the rounded curves and everything else, and even the camera bar on the back. The difference is this has a dual camera system on the back with a 50 megapixel wide and a 48 megapixel ultra wide with macro focus. It does not have a dedicated telephoto lens, but it does support, with the wide angle camera, the super res zoom up to 8x. So with Google's software enhancements and its zoom capabilities, this phone may be perfectly acceptable for most people, and it has a $799 starting price, which is $200 less than the 9 Pro. So you can save $200 and get the smaller one with just missing out on one camera. Now, spinning it back around to the front, the Pro models have a 42 megapixel front-facing camera with that great ultra-wide 103-degree field of view. One reason that I loved the Pixel 3 was it had a fantastic front-facing camera, and I haven't had a phone that has matched the capabilities and the functionality of that camera since then. So this should be proven to be a good one, and I'm going to be testing this out quite a bit with that ultra-wide 103-degree view. The Pixel 9 has a 10.5 megapixel camera with a 95-degree field of view. The Pro models have Super Actua displays, and the 9 has an Actua display. In my eyes, I can't tell the difference between that one or the other, but the Super Actua is a higher level specification of display. The 9 and the 9 Pro are exactly the same size with a 6.3-inch display, and the Pro XL has a 6.8-inch display. So you can really check out all of the specifications in my written Substack article that is linked in the video description below. It's much easier to go through all of those specs, and I don't want to bore you on the viewers. So check out that written article where I do have those specification differences between the three phones. That's kind of a walk around the hardware. I'll talk about my experiences in a little bit. Let's circle up and talk a little bit about the software. So I'm a bit surprised that these Pixel 9 phones launch with Android 14. But of course, Google promises 7 years of OS and security updates. And we know that we've seen Android 15 at Google I/O. It's going to be here soon. But interestingly, it's not launching with Android 15. But if you recall at Google I/O, there really is no massive showstoppers in Android 15. So it'll be nice to have, but not essential at this point, with the focus on some of the applications and the camera performance and the hardware in this initial launch. So Google stock software, it's nice to see with the real power of a Pixel found in the camera magic and the new Google AI elements. And it's interesting because many of those Google AI elements will not be found on last year's Pixel 8 and even the Pixel 8 Pro. So it's kind of unfortunate if you bought a Pixel 8 that you won't be able to experience all of the newest Google AI elements. And we'll have to see how that shakes out. I've been a bit hesitant to try out AI since I'm in my mid-50s and I don't want to see creativity left up to computers. I like reading what people honestly wrote and reading emails that people respond to me. Now with some of these AI features, it's doing a lot of that heavy lift, and the creativity could be up to 1 million people that contributed to that AI. So I've been on the edges of AI. I've used it here and there to try out. And I have to say, after a week of using some of the Google AI features, I can see where it can be helpful. And I recall at a Mobius event at Microsoft many, many years ago, maybe 15 years ago, there were several of us in a group and we were talking about the future of phones and what we'd like these phones to do and how it should really be our assistant and take care of everything for us. And we're now finally seeing, decades later, that these new Pixels have the power in those phones to do way more than even I was thinking about many years ago. The Pixel phones today are extremely powerful, and many of these functionalities and features are built into the phone itself. It doesn't even need a connection to the internet. I live in an area with dynamic weather that even changes between my home and office locations, which is about 45 miles. So I appreciate the AI in the new weather app, and I'm always looking for the best weather app to try to indicate, do I need an umbrella in the city, or do I wear shorts or whatever. My wife was actually blown away when I did a test of the Add Me function in the camera. Now this Add Me function, if you haven't seen it, it allows you to take a picture with a phone and somebody in it, and then ask that person to come up. They take your phone, you sit down, and you sit down virtually next to where they were, or stand up or whatever, and then they take that picture, and the software will merge those two together and create one picture. So what this really is going to help with is when you're out and about, maybe on a trip or something, and you know how you may ask somebody, hey, would you mind taking a picture of me and my wife? Now, you're risking a $1,000 plus phone at times, maybe $800 if you got the Pixel 9. And that's a risky thing. It can be a risky thing, asking people to take your picture. With the Add Me function, you no longer need another person to come in, and you can take a whole group shot even, and then you can have somebody jump out, take yours, and you can be in that group shot. So there's a lot of cool functionality. I'm going to test that out some more. So my wife was very impressed with that Add Me function because she's often out with friends and taking pictures. We may see my wife move back to a Pixel 9 after experiencing the Add Me and other functions that I've been showing her, such as the ability to transcribe a phone call and keep that and then edit that. And there's even some AI summaries of that phone call. Really powerful functions in the Pixel. And I know it's just been a couple years since I convinced her to move to an iPhone, and now I may see her move back to a Google Pixel phone. The Magic Editor has already had some amazing elements, and it's even more packed in there now with some AI assistance. I personally rarely spend much time with my photos after I capture them, but I'd love to know how you viewers edit them after the fact. There seems to be a lot of people that do edit their photos and modify them and make them better, more creative and things after the fact, and I really want to dive into Magic Editor because it looks, at least in the demos, that it's very simple to do and it only takes a couple seconds. And so there are clearly ways to make creative content, but I'm curious if the masses spend this kind of time with their photos, and maybe I will start spending more time with mine. Another cool piece of software that I saw that I fell in love with immediately is called Pixel Screenshots. So you can take a screenshot, and my wife captures hundreds of screenshots of recipes. So you can now use Gemini Nano with the multimodality, which saves, organizes, and helps you easily recall that information. So this includes like capturing a screenshot and then getting the recipe out of that screenshot. And often the thing is, we have these screenshots of recipes all over the place. It's hard to find them again. If you're at the store, you can't get the shopping list for that recipe. And just the way that the screenshot may not be that well formatted to actually read the recipe. The Pixel Screenshots app will take that recipe, take the data, metadata, and the data out of that screenshot, and it will give you a very well organized recipe. So things like recipes, coupon codes, and many, many more things. So Pixel Screenshots also runs on the device, so you don't need an internet connection to use it either. I've used most of the Google Pixel phones over the past 8 years, but rarely use them as my long-term daily driver. I think the longest I had a Pixel phone as my daily driver was about 6 months, and I believe that was the Pixel 3, the big one, maybe the Pixel 3 XL, I think it was called. I primarily didn't use a Pixel phone long-term because of the substandard cellular reception and the Wi-Fi reliability, slow charging, and the hardware that didn't really excite me. I have to say that the Pixel 9 series really caught my attention. It's very much like my iPhone 15 Pro Max, and I'm not saying that Google copied that, but it is a nice, attractive form factor that feels great in the hand. I enjoy the software and some hardware aspects of Pixel devices in the past, but I never found them more compelling than Samsung or OnePlus. It's still a bit too early to tell for sure, but in my week of testing, the Google Tensor G4 does seem to be performing very well for connectivity, and I'll be able to test that now more that my SIM is in that phone as my daily driver. I can pop that SIM in that phone, leave it there, use my test SIM that I also have on T-Mobile, put it in another phone and do some comparisons for the cellular reception. Google advertises fast wired and wireless charging, so I'll be checking that out, although it really can't touch what OnePlus provides in terms of the speed and capacity of its wired and wireless charging. One other thing that's really nice to see in the Google Pixel 9 is the satellite SOS capability. So if you're in an area when you have no signal at all, it's nice to know that you can still contact emergency services when you need help. It's only been a week since I've had the Pixel 9 phones in hand, so let's talk about some of the pros and cons. First, there's ample RAM in all models, that it supports that Google AI, right? We have 12 and 16 gigabytes of RAM in the Pixel 9 and Pixel 9 Pro. It's a lovely design, the form factor, and the attractive color options. And of course, typical Pixel, outstanding camera performance. I've taken a few pictures so far and they've been awesome, and I really look forward to that. And of course, many years of software support, right? With Google, we have 7 years of software and security updates coming our way. Some of the cons: it is faster charging than before, but it's still not as fast as Samsung and OnePlus. And then the Gemini Advanced is a bit interesting how this is being handled. So Gemini Advanced is a subscription service, and it'll cost $19.99 per month. But if you buy a Pixel 9 Pro or 9 Pro XL, you get that free for 1 year. If that's important to you, you really should buy the 9 Pro instead of the 9, since the Gemini offer makes the 9 Pro actually less expensive than the 9, right? There's a $240 cost if you were to buy Gemini Advanced, and yet there's only a $200 difference in the price between the 9 Pro and the 9. So consider that before you make that. And another thing that's not super clear to me, I have a Google One family plan, and in the fine print it says family plan members or those with a 5 terabyte or higher Google One plan are not eligible for that Gemini Advanced. So I'll test Gemini Advanced a little bit. I mean, it's an interactive way of talking to your phone. It's very interesting. The demo looks interesting. I'm not sure it's worth the $20 a month, so I will explore that a little bit more to see what the cost would be to me and if it's worth that extra price. Now, speaking of pricing, so the Pixel 9, as I mentioned, starts at $799 for the 128 gig model. It's also available in a 256 gigabyte model for $899. And then the 9 Pro starts at $999 for the 120 gig model, and the 9 Pro XL starts at $1099 for the 128 gig model. Now, some carriers, I was in the T-Mobile store getting my SIM card, they mentioned they don't even are not even going to carry the 128. They have the 256 and the 512 gigabyte models, and I believe that with T-Mobile, there may be a special launch offer where you get that 512 gigabyte model for the price of the 256 model. So check out some carrier deals and pre-order deals before this thing launches. The 9 Pro XL actually can go up to 1 terabyte of integrated memory, and that is priced at $1,549. So I kind of showed some colors real quickly, and in my pictures you can see some of the colors. There is the obsidian, the porcelain, the wintergreen, and the peony for the Pixel 9, and then the 9 Pro and the 9 Pro XL have that same obsidian and porcelain, but they then have hazel and rose quartz. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, it's been a while since I've used an Android phone as my daily driver. But I really felt compelled to go to T-Mobile and get a physical SIM because I am loving that Pixel 9 Pro XL so far. So it's my daily driver. Let's see how long that can stick around. I plan to follow up with this initial impressions with more impressions as I spend more time with it. The hardware, as I mentioned, is very similar to the iPhone 15 Pro Max, but I've made lists in the past year of why I prefer iOS, why I prefer Android. And looking at the Android side of things, here are some reasons that I personally prefer Android. The universal back gesture. I can't get over it. iPhone does it in some apps, some native apps. It's a little bit different. I just love that universal back gesture on Android. Messages. I know that iMessage now will support RCS with iOS 18, but with the Google messages, I can connect online and message people without my phone. I can use my work Windows computer, I can use my home Mac computer, and I can connect with messages. Now, of course, people use Telegram, WhatsApp, and other messaging services, but I always like to have that fallback with my text messages. Settings are found within each application. Camera, for example. All the settings I need are right in the camera app on Android, rather than being buried in a general settings area that takes longer to get to. And of course, the keyboard. The number row and the press and hold for basic symbols and punctuation is awesome on Android. There's far fewer taps required to enter complicated passwords and other data. And I know iOS has third-party keyboards, but they're pretty terrible. They're unreliable. They never stick between all the different apps, and I personally hate them. So I use voice to text most of the time on an iPhone, and I love having the keyboard on an Android. Another thing that really bugs me on iOS that I love on Android is volume control. There's extensive, specific controls that are intuitive on Android, and on iOS, they're terrible. Also, one thing that I can't believe is still a thing on iOS, when you're recording video on an Android phone, you can pause the video and then continue and pick up and do that without having to create many small videos when you want to pause on an iPhone. And Google advertised that the Pixel 9s now have the best video capture performance of any phone out there, and we need to put that to the test. There are also many reasons to use iOS, but with that new, larger Pixel 3 coming soon and RCS available on iOS, I may be back to using Android as my primary smartphone platform. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share. Interact with me here. Stay tuned for more coverage of various types of products related to technology and mobility, including e-bikes, wearables, fitness health gear, smartphones, and much more. May the mobile force be with you.